Hi everyone, this is part three of the 3B unit on forestry, and we're going to go over forest fires and succession. So forest fires, they're natural, and a lot of times they naturally occur because of lightning strikes or concentration of heat on dry tinder. In sometimes some scenarios, you can have controlled burns that get out of control and they turn into bigger raging forest fires. But most forest fires are actually anthropogenically caused. Cigarette butt thrown out the window. Even there was a big forest fire that was started, and they found out it was the like reflection of concentrated light from a concave surface of the bottom of like a Coke can kind of thing. Light hit it just in the right way and it reflected, and it concentrated that light like a magnifying glass, and it caused a forest fire. It's absolutely insane. Right. So we have two main types of fires. We have surface fires and crown fires. Surface fires are smaller fires. These are the ones that we do as prescribed burns. They burn the undergrowth, the leaf litter, the built up stuff underneath. And this stimulates germination for some species like giant sequoia and jack pines. And you do surface fires so that we don't get crown fires. So these are the really big fires. They're really hot. They leap from treetop to treetop. It kills wildlife. It increases soil erosion. These are the types of fires that burn out of control. These are the types of fires that are still burning in California as we speak. Okay. So over 100 years, the Forest Service suppressed all fires. So any fire that started, they would put it out. But so many of our ecosystems actually depend on fires, and then that excess vegetation that builds up underneath those sticks, those twigs, the dead leaves, that actually is kindling for future fires. So, if you have wildland like forests with urban interface, housing developments that are near forests are really vulnerable to forest fires. And you had a lot of those fires earlier in the year, well, early in the school year in September, really ripping through suburban areas. So, here, this is a computer simulation of fire in an area. So, fires actually reduce the probability of catastrophic fire. Okay, so the natural fire regime has obviously been altered because we've suppressed fires. So what happens is you have these areas that now have really densely packed trees, and this leads to something called their ladder fuels, like the staircase effect. And what happens is then the fire gets higher and higher as it goes from tree to tree. All right. So you get fires being created from other fires. Okay. And then those crown fires. So fires is really important for ecosystem services. So it reduces your chances of having massive fires. But also as that undergrowth and some of the smaller trees burn, you now have a huge amount of nutrient input into the soil. It controls a lot of different insect pests, controls a lot of tree pathogens. It maintains species diversity, and a lot of these trees, like you saw before, the jack pines and the giant sequoias, they need. It's like Goldilocks. The pine cone. Okay, I know you guys can't see me right now, but if you have the pine cone, if it's too hot, it burns to a crisp. If it's too cold, it doesn't open enough. You need that just right amount of heat to open up the pine cone, to melt the pine resin and open up the cone to then spread the seeds. That's only certain pine trees. Right. So now coming to ecological succession, you guys are going to do an activity on this tonight where you'll have to send me an email. The directions are going to be posted. All right. So it's not, you don't send me an email. You like put my email into the system. That's what it is. I don't want to confuse you guys. So ecosystems with a higher biodiversity have an easier time recovering from disturbances. And we have two different types of basically disturbances with succession. You have primary succession and you have secondary succession. All right, we're going to start. Oh, well, we're going to go into pioneer communities first. So, pioneer communities these are like early communities. They're characterized by a simple structure, okay, a small number of species interactions. You have broad niches. So, you have generalist species that are coming in because they can survive almost anywhere. Very low species diversity. Whereas climax communities, like you guys saw in part one, are old communities. huge complex structure, lots of biodiversity, narrow niches. So you get organisms that are very specialized to do specific things within this ecosystem. And like I said, that high species diversity. So going over to primary succession, you start with bare rock. There's no soil here. That's the big thing. This can take hundreds or even thousands of years because soil needs to be built up first. And soil takes a long time to develop. In prime areas, an inch of soil can take 500 years to develop. Okay. So, newly emerged coral atolls and volcanic islands, newly formed glacial moraines. So, basically, a glacier melts, and underneath it, you have rocks and stone, but there is not fertile soil under there because it's been covered with ice for thousands of years. Islands where the previous community has been extinguished by something like a volcanic eruption, paved parking lots. And remember with this, there's no soil. In your general progression of primary succession, you have a pioneer species that first moves in. They don't really compete well, and then they kind of get outcompeted, um, and other organisms come in. So in your primary succession, your pioneer species are lichens and mosses. So lichens actually chemically, they have an enzyme in them that chemically breaks down rock. And then as these things die and decompose, small amounts of soil are created, and then more complex plants can grow. And then the roots of those plants break up more of the rock. You have the freezing and thawing now in these cracks, and the soil depth increases. And then eventually you get shrubs, small trees, and then you have larger, fast growing trees. And then you have a climax community made up of large hardwood species like we see in our ecosystems around us. Primary succession takes an insanely long time. Okay. So here's your classic sequence with your lichens, and then you get ferns, grasses, shrubs, and then your climax community. All right. Secondary succession. This is an existing community has been wiped out by a disturbance, but there's still some soil there. Okay. Your process starts with grasses instead of with lichens because the soil is already there. All right. So cyclone damage, forest fires, landslides, that's where you get secondary succession. Okay. There's still soil. It's more rapid than primary succession, but it depends on the climate. So secondary succession is going to be much slower in a desert or a tundra area than it is in like a tropical rainforest or a temperate deciduous forest, something like that. Okay. So here is your secondary succession. Gap regeneration is a fun one because when a big tree falls in a forest, especially in a rainforest that has a canopy, what you get is a hole. And this gap allows sunlight to reach saplings below. And you get a whole different types of forest regeneration in this area. And all of these plants competing for all of that sunlight. And what we call that is gap regeneration. It's a type of secondary succession. The other thing that I want to go over is old field succession. And that's basically just abandoned farmland that now is regrowing into whatever ecosystem it was before. So in the Northeast, it would be a temperate deciduous forest that it grows into. All right. So keep in mind, um, right after a disturbance, you're going to have a significant loss in biodiversity. It's going to remain low for some time. So that leads to a decrease in total biomass, species richness, net primary productivity. And then as succession progresses, they'll begin to increase again until they're at like the same level as it was before. So if you look at here, this is you have the number of plant species, and then you have an eruption and it declines drastically. Okay. So here it declines. Okay. And then it goes down. And then what happens is you slowly start getting these building back up again. All right. So that's it for 3B. Um, we did part one. You guys did part two in a screencast for homework. And then this was your part three.